Chapter 1871. Dainty Eaters. Before long, the hatchlings were up and moving again, ready to take on the world. Literally, in the case of Seraphina, the moment that she woke up, she tried to pick a fight with Lotus, whose nose was only centimeters from her own, only to be held and cuddled by the creature-loving beast master. "Good morning, sunshine. No biting, sorry that I startled you. Are you ready for more meat? I've just finished cooking." The little dragon stared at the hopeful face of Lotus and then nodded. "More meat is good, with a side of meat, and maybe some of those eggs." "Got it. We'll bring you over just the right sort of thing. I've got a nice spicy sausage that I can scramble into an omelet for you." Seraphina had no idea what that was, but it sure did sound good. Then, her brothers woke up and immediately decided that they needed to wander. They were not well-disciplined troops. "Hey, get back here, there is food coming soon. If you wander off, you'll miss it." The behemoths all rushed back over to her, checking to see if the food was visible from where she was standing, but Lotus had left the room to do the cooking, and there was nobody else around. "Trust the nose," William decided. That was good logic, Seraphina agreed. She could still smell Lotus and meat, so they could just follow the smell and go to where the food was. The 5 small reptiles rushed across the floor of the guild house in a skittering of claws, making a beeline for the kitchen, where Lotus was adding one more dish to the breakfast that she had already prepared for the hatching beasts. They had made a lentil stew this morning that she was sure that the behemoths would like, and then there were assorted meats, crunchy vegetables, and now an omelet. Oh, good timing. This is the kitchen. This is a favorite place of everyone because it's where the food is made. But this is not where we eat. You'll have to go back into the other room, Lotus explained. The bunnies rushed forward and picked up the hatchlings, petting them softly as they relocated them to the dining hall, where high seats had been arranged so they could eat at the table with everyone else, despite not having humanoid forms. Somehow, Seraphina couldn't find it in her to be angry at the fluffy-eared creatures for picking her up and relocating her, while the behemoths found the whole thing to be a grand adventure. They were moving through the air, embraced in warm and soft. It was pretty good. The hatchlings were placed at the table, and Carl came down to eat with Dana at his side and Kara trailing behind them, discussing the day's plans with Opal. A day in the life of a war disciple hatchling sounded like a fun idea for both of them, but Dana had already warned Tessa, so they were going to have to let it progress naturally and not borrow the little ones for a staged adventure outing. No matter how much the little ones would love it. They had such wonderful plans, and now they had a reason to manipulate the whole day to get to a point where the hatchlings would be doing the fun things for the recording that Opal was making, without getting to the point where Tessa would shut down their plans. Really, she was being too uptight. Nothing bad was going to happen to the hatchlings, and the behemoths even had immortal rank barriers on them to keep them safe from most forms of harm. But they weren't the only ones that were interested in the little ones. Hawk was waiting for Seraphina to learn to fly so that he could swoop in and start teaching her about the joys of fire in all its forms. She could breathe fire from birth, which was a great advantage, so she was definitely a new disciple for the fire faction. He just had to get to her before Sister Remy corrupted her, and she ended up using frost fire or something silly like that. With Dana's warning, Tessa already knew that the beasts were scheming against her children, looking to either start teaching them age-inappropriate things, or to get them into a live-streamed game show. So, she was extra protective when she joined them for breakfast, moving between the little ones to make sure that they all had what they needed. The first to realize that there was a better way to eat lentil stew was Dale. He simply extended his barrier and pulled the contents of the bowl directly into his mouth, one blob at a time. But Ollie had the more innovative way. He grabbed the bowl between 2 thick forelimbs, placed his beak at the lip, and simply tipped over backward. That dumped the majority into his mouth in half a second, but it was rather messy, and now he had to lick up the rest, since this stuff was just as good as Auntie Lotus promised. "The bowl stays on the tray. Why are you making a mess?" Ollie shrugged. "It was taking too long to get the food in my mouth." Robert looked up, his entire snout covered in lentil stew. He did not see the problem. He simply buried his face in it and slurped it up as fast as he could inhale. Tessa wished she could say that her daughter was the dainty eater of the group, but she was viciously tearing into the omelette in front of her like it was small prey that needed to be dismembered, complete with the happy growls and flipping the pieces in the air to catch them in her mouth. So, the honor of dainty eater went to Dale, as he was the only one not currently covered in his own breakfast. Or someone else's, as Ollie had managed to get some on William. Chapter 1872. Eating is not a race. Carl watched with great amusement as the little ones were brought another round of breakfast, and Lotus, two partners, joined them at the table. Presumably that would be to teach the kids some sort of table manners, but mostly the bear and dragon just wanted to get a better look at the new people to see what was so entertaining about them that it had Lotus making a special breakfast. Naturally, they got a customized breakfast as well, but they were bonded to Lotus. These hatchlings weren't trying to steal their spot, were they? They shouldn't be. They belonged to Tessa. But you could never be too careful, even if your opponent wasn't fluffy. They knew their mom entirely too well, and she was the sort to get immediately swayed by the presence of new cute and fluffy things, so they couldn't let their guard down for a minute, or they would end up with even more siblings. Though, these ones were already kind of family, right? Didn't that put them off limits? The hatchlings took their cue from the other young beasts and began to mimic their methods of eating. Even Seraphina began using a claw to chop her food to bits, then eating the bits one at a time. This takes too long, she realized. Tenna giggled. It's not all about speed. If you eat it slow, you get to taste it for longer. That was a great bit of wisdom that they had not considered. So, they all began to eat in a more elegant and measured manner so that they could enjoy the flavor of their food instead of simply stuffing their faces full of it. That was also significantly less messy than the original option, and the hatchlings didn't have any particular plans for the day other than finding a way to eat again once they were done eating. That was as far as they had planned. So, having the bear and the older dragon with them was perfect. They were paired with the auntie who cooked, so if they stayed nearby, there would always be food. However, they didn't have to make plans because everyone else had made plans for them. Tessa wanted to introduce them to the other hatchlings from the last batch. Lotus wanted to go play in the grass. Thor thought he should introduce the boys to the smashing posts, and Opal wanted to show the little ones around the forest. She just couldn't tell Tessa that was where she wanted to take the little ones, or the bossy mama dragon would go and inspect the game show setup that she had created in advance, and that would ruin the whole surprise. Once the plates were emptied for the third time, the little ones were getting sluggish, so Thor cleaned them all up and put them down for a nap. He was originally going to put them in 2 beds, one for girls and one for boys, which was how his herd had done it when he was little. But there were only 5 little ones here with only 1 girl. And the boys didn't want to sleep separately, because a red dragon was very warm. She might be a mighty disciple of war, but at this point, she was also the best pillow in the house, according to 4 young behemoths, who were snoring soundly the moment that they all got settled. Eat and sleep. Eat and sleep. Just like the baby dragons, but without wings. Ewan joked to Tenna as Thor returned to the room. Tenna nodded her agreement. Yep, we got at least a week before they're properly fun. Ewan agreed. It took a while before you had enough energy to stay awake long enough to do fun things. But they would get there soon enough, as the new batch of hatchlings looked pretty energetic to start with. They just ate themselves into a food coma, like everyone else. But weren't those behemoths growing too fast? They were growing even faster than the dragon. There weren't a lot of things that grew larger or faster than a baby dragon, but the 4 boys from this hatching definitely were. Carl tried not to laugh at the group of not-quite hatchlings deeply discussing the growth of other hatchlings, like a concerned group of older siblings. But since the young ones were sleeping too much, and Opal was as enthralled with the cute sleeping scene as much as any of the others, Kara had another mission to accomplish. The Black Dragon Avatar was sitting in the library, reading a book about power matrix development and shaking his head in dismay, when Kara came in with a cup of his favorite tea and a small plate of pastries. Unlike my traditional cupcakes, these have been chosen to be low crumb and not leave any residue on the fingers, she explained. That is very thoughtful of you. But somehow I can't help but be suspicious that a badger who is overly thoughtful is up to something. Kara laughed as she put the snack down and then leaned her head over his book, blocking his view as she read the page upside down. Oh, Power Matrices. Yeah, that book is useless even from my point of view. There are like 3 ways in that book, and none of us used any of them. She explained. The dragon pushed her head to the side, and Kara took her opening. She subtly licked his hand, cataloging the taste of divine black dragon, before standing up and grabbing him another book. Hints of allspice and nutmeg, a bit like an apple pie with an interestingly minty undertone. Not bad at all. This one came from the Immortal Realms library. Sister Remy borrowed it. Unfortunately, that means you can't keep it unless you make a copy, but it's more entertaining reading than the version from the mortal world that you have. The dragon shrugged and waved his hand to duplicate the book, then handed her the original back as he opened the duplicate. That's fine, I know a spell to just make more. This one is likely to be more interesting for certain. That mortal realm one barely understands the concept. Kara laughed. Of course it doesn't understand. The people who wrote it never managed to reach immortality. Chapter 1873. Huge. When Carl came down for breakfast the next day, he found that their newest little general had assembled her troops for a question-and-answer session. Their target of the day? Thor. So, they're going to get huge? Bigger than dragons? Is that even possible? Seraphina asked. Of course. I'm much bigger than a dragon when I transform, so they're going to be large. You're also going to be a very large dragon when you grow up. As it should be. The red dragon wants powerful disciples of war. The little dragon nodded in agreement, while her brothers headbutt Thor's legs. Show us, show us. All right, everyone come outside, and I will show you how large a behemoth gets when they're all grown up. Seraphina marshaled her brothers into 2 even ranks and led them out the door behind their father, while Tessa tried not to laugh, and Lotus giggled while pointing at her childhood friend. It really is a red dragon thing. Bossy from birth. Lotus giggled. I was not that bad. Oh, you were. The boys were all terrified of you when we were in elementary school. And that was before you started to beat them up for not listening. If you didn't meet the Carl, you might have become the youngest orphanage matron ever. That was the peak of scary in Lotus' mind. Once the kids were out in the yard, Thor had them stop at the edge of the grasslands, then transformed. Not just to his normal size, but as large as he could enhance himself with behemoth. I can't even see the top. Mr. Black, do dragons get that large? I've never seen a dragon that big. Are you that big? The Avatar laughed. Dragons don't usually get that large. Only certain species get more than about 200 meters long. He's nearly twice as big as I am. That was suitably impressive to all the little ones. What the Black Dragon Avatar didn't mention was that there was no real advantage to being so large most of the time, and if your species couldn't survive mostly off energy input, you'd starve within days at that size. Which is why dragons basically stopped growing at Supreme. They would get more powerful, but a legendary dragon wasn't significantly larger than a Supreme, and most demigods were the same in appearance as they were as legends. A few changed, but rarely the dragons. The Titans and their giant kin viewed size as power, so they continue to get bigger with every step, but mostly they wasted energy on simply being large when they could have used that extra energy to become more powerful. Though, that could just be the innate prejudice of a dragon. The Titans were generally hostile, and they had an uneasy truce with the dragon gods at the moment, though they were considered eternal enemies by the followers of the Creator's pantheon. Thor transformed back once he was certain that the kids were suitably impressed with his ability to be large. Then he realized that there was an advantage to being large on occasion. His body absorbed energy to sustain itself and help his growth, and it did it much more quickly when he was large. If he didn't stay large long enough to get hungry, he could use all that extra energy when he transformed back. That was so cool. One day, I will be that large, and I will lead a whole army, and we will take over the whole world. Thor patted his daughter on the head. You've got big aspirations, so I have a surprise for you. It's a specialty training method for hatchlings. These are my beloved smashing posts. This is a place where you can train your wings so that you're not outflanked and surrounded in aerial combat, as well as practicing targeting your flames. Once you're a bit more grown, Uncle Hawk will show you how to make your dragon fire even better. But before he can do that, you need to master all the physical skills to get you ready to use it. The little dragon looked skeptical, but as Hawk glided past overhead, she saw that the entire bird was made of fire. That was awesome. She could breathe fire, but he was made of fire. That had to be a higher stage of fire mastery than she was capable of using yet. The black dragon watched the dark flame phoenix circling in the sky. That was another exceptionally rare species that he was certain evolved from something else, as his flames were much more blue than usual. Most of the dark flame phoenix clan had nearly pure black flames, with only flickers of blue. He had to say, it was a beautiful effect, and if they happened to meet another, he would certainly be considered handsome by his own kind. But watching the hero worship of the tiny red dragon was much more entertaining than pondering what a phoenix might find attractive. She was clearly enthralled by the idea of being made of fire. So, he decided to motivate her. If you grow up nice and strong, there is a skill he can teach you to cover your whole body in protective fire. You can use it to make armor in human form, or just have your whole dragon form surrounded in flames. Seraphina's head snapped around. Really? I can be fire? Yep. You just need to be strong enough without it before you can prove that you're worthy of better fire. I will do it right now. How do we work this thing? Dad said that it would make my flying stronger. What you need to do is fly through one of the rings to start the training. Once you fly through one, another one will turn gold. You fly through that one next and then find the next gold one. It trains your agility while flying, plus your speed. If you're going to ambush enemies to use your fire, you need to be fast and accurate, so start there. The smashing posts on the ground are for your brothers. And they were already testing them. Chapter 1874. Charge. Dale had decided that he understood the point of the smashing posts. To smash, of course. He ran at the nearest post as fast as his little legs would let him and lowered his head to hit evenly with all three horns. He hit the post so hard that his entire body lifted off the ground, and the little behemoth was left shaking off the aftereffect of the impact. A slow smile spread over his face, and as he saw another post in the distance, as he regained his balance. Charge. They're definitely your kids, Tessa informed Thor as the other three raced toward the posts. I knew that they would love them, but I'll put a softening barrier around them so they don't hurt their necks before they're strong enough for a full force impact. They are part dragon, after all, so they might not have a Sero neck. Tessa could tell at a glance that they did not. Sero didn't really have a neck. Their body just angled up to their ridge and beak. But the little ones had an actual neck. A short one, but at least a few flexible vertebrae that would let them look around more easily than a Sero that shifted its whole upper body to look left and right. The barrier on the posts made the impact a bit softer, supporting the bodies of the tiny behemoths as they charged. They charged, hit the post, tumbled and rolled as they bounced off, then shook their head and wobbled toward another target. They were perfectly in their element now, and the exercise was good for building muscle, so there wasn't any good reason to stop them. They would get hungry in 10 minutes anyhow. Overhead, Seraphina was frantically flapping her wings, the young muscles not fully developed yet, as she had never really used her body to fly any sort of distance. This was going to take a lot of practice, she decided. She had made it through the second ring by the time that she was exhausted, and simply spread her wings to glide towards Thor, who had come to stand under her, knowing that she would simply fall from the sky when she tired herself to exhaustion. All the hatchling dragons did the same thing the first few days. As much as they didn't want to admit it, even Tenna and Yuan still did it sometimes when they were exploring. The forest dragons didn't even see an issue with it. They just stopped in a likely-looking tree and had a nap until they were ready to start exploring again. They only stopped when they got older because they got so large that tree branches wouldn't support them anymore, and they didn't like sleeping in the dirt. As predicted, it was under 10 minutes before the boys were in a pile in the middle of the training grounds, napping. Tessa and the bunnies picked them up and moved them to the side so that others could use the training area during the hours that the kids were sleeping. That also gave them time to have more food brought over, and Librarian Ike came over with a freshly written book for Tessa. A late hatching day gift for you. I think that the little ones will enjoy this. She examined the book, then laughed. The Adventures of Thor the Brave by Opal Karlsdottir. There were full-page illustrations on every other page, and the story was a magnificent adventure from Thor's early days, suitable to the realistic aspirations of young children. Where did you even find this?
Tessa asked.
Did you not know? Miss Opal has over 20 volumes of Thor's adventures in children's book form in the library, along with her other titles. They're a fan favorite at the orphanage. This one is the first in the series because that's where you should always start with the book series. The librarian took his books seriously. Thor smiled at the book and nodded approvingly. You're in this one too. The first story is about when we went out to hunt lizard men and ogres. There is a prequel about the valiant battle between us and the giant stag beetle, but Opal thought that was better for humans, not a species that could actually fight. And the drakes? Thor chuckled at her question. That's in Hawk's collection of stories, which I'm sure that Seraphina will be interested in later, as it's told from the point of view of a flying creature. All of Thor's adventures were naturally told from the point of view of someone who didn't leave the ground. So, they would be more interesting to the boys, and Seraphina would want flying battles too. Especially ones with fire. Beside them, the black dragon paused, as if receiving a message. It seems that I am to be replaced here, now that the immediate threat of Carl bonding a hatchling or claiming one as a pet by proxy is past. The death god has decided that while Lotus counts as a pet to the Carl, Tenna does not. Hey! Ophelia patted Lotus on the head to calm the irate little priestess. No, the black dragon has a point. You're our healing tree mascot, simply too cute to be anything but a treasured pet. But Miss Tenna is going to grow up big and strong, a mighty dragon to take care of her mother. Tenna flexed her wings in pride. She could definitely do that. Carl, tell them I'm not a pet. Carl shrugged and activated Guard Pets and called for one comfort pet. He got a Vorpal bunny, one of the infamous, unpettable species, as their attacks had instant death on them that would kill most mortals in a single hit. But they were 2 kilos of pure white fluff, and Lotus squealed in joy as she got to cuddle a new species. She was so happy to have a new type of creature to cuddle that she didn't even notice that Carl never denied treating her like a pet. But how could he? Even the apartment that she shared with Ophelia was made with the pet space skill, to create what the skill called the perfect kennel. How could that make her anything but a beloved pet? Not his, of course. Ophelia would definitely fight him for that title. But still a beloved pet. Chapter 1875. Don't upset the priestess. The black dragon laughed at the commotion that his words had caused, and then shrugged. I simply relay the will of the gods. Lotus sighed and stopped wiggling in Ophelia's arms. Fine, but I won't be happy about people calling me a pet. I'm a proper priestess, no matter how short I am. The black dragon laughed harder. Oh, it's definitely not about your size. However, I simply must run off. There is a replacement for me coming to the new home merchant clan right now, and I have been informed that they are not to know that I am already here. Then, the demigods simply vanished from the tiny world. So, do you think that it's a matter of jurisdiction, or do you think that it's a personal grudge that they're not supposed to meet? Rue shook her head. I think that it's likely personal. You see, once you reach immortality, longevity doesn't always equate to progress. Especially for dragons. Once they hit their personal potential, they will stay there forever unless they are killed. So, if there is another black dragon avatar here, or perhaps a seeker for the black dragon gods, which won't necessarily be a dragon, then they might have actually been stuck at immortality for millennia. If they're old enough to have known that demigod when he was still supreme, or worse, in his youth, then they're almost guaranteed to harbor resentment at being left behind. Lotus winked at her. For all we know, it could be his ex-wife, and he's simply running away before she vents on him. That actually sounded possible, given how much time the chosen of the gods spent interacting with each other. If the two of them once had a romantic attachment, it was definitely better that she didn't know he was here. Especially if she was still an immortal. I should go check up on the store. Is everything under control here? Carl asked. For at least 2 hours while the little ones sleep. Unless Lotus breaks free to fight over the avatar calling her a pet. Ophelia chuckled at Tessa's comment, while Lotus sighed. They're always picking on me. I tell you, only Tifa knows how to not say mean things. Tenna looked at the smug little bear. Wasn't that just because Tifa so rarely said anything that she was never saying anything mean? Both her and Lotus could hear the little bear's thoughts, and she was definitely thinking some rude things about people. Carl left the group to do their thing, and returned to the guild store to see how everything was going in their absence. Things were moving along fairly smoothly, from what he could see, though the customers were more than a little concerned by his choice of shopkeepers. The combination of the pet sitter and the dark elven priestesses was not something that you would run into at a normal shop, and the lack of an overseeing elder while they were running the dungeon had left nobody else in the shop except a few young Leakin girls who were greeting customers. "Ah, branch leader, you are back. I had hoped that you would come back soon." An immortal greeted Carl from the doorway. "Please do come in. I will have the shelves restocked in a moment." There wasn't actually anything to stock. They only had duplicates of what was already out there, as they had been away on a dungeon run, and then to see the hatching of the little ones. But it was the thought that counted, and the man was primarily concerned about entering the room when it was just the priestesses and the pet sitter working. The immortal looked nervous, and Carl began to wonder what had happened while they were gone. Had someone tried to start trouble? Once he entered, a few more immortals came in right behind him and visibly sighed in relief when they saw that it was just Carl standing in the room. Something had definitely happened. "All right, what can I help you with?" "I sent the others into the back room for stock, since it looks like you're all nervous around them." "How well do you know those workers?" One of the immortals asked carefully. "Pretty well." "Is there an issue with their customer service?" "I can talk to them about it." "No, it's just—" "Never mind." One more immortal stepped into the room and laughed. "So that's why you came in now." They insulted one of the priestesses, and the pair took turns spanking them until they apologized. Carl chuckled. "That sounds like good entertainment." For future reference, they have the constitution of a void immortal dungeon boss. I wouldn't pick any fights with them unless you are truly prepared for what comes after. At first, it seemed that they were going to run away in embarrassment, but then they recovered and got back to business. "We have come for a reason. Our clan needs a dozen agility-focused rings, and we don't see any on the shelves." Carl nodded and brought one out. "Like this? It's made for rogue-type classes. I have them at epic and rare grade." They were made by the guild members, and they were actually on display, but in one of the cases on the far side of the room, where the group had apparently forgotten to look. "Yes, those will do. A dozen at rare grade." That sale got the group out of the shop quickly, leaving only Carl and the woman who had watched them be humiliated by the priestesses. "I'm actually here for something a bit more obscure. A little birdie tells me that you know where I can find a certain demigod of the death god." Carl laughed. "Sorry, I can't help you there. All child support requests, seeker missions, and complaints must go through your local branch of the Dragon Church." The woman frowned. "So, you do know who I'm talking about then?" "I can neither confirm nor deny that. You smell like his magic. There is no way that I could mistake that particular scent. Unfortunately, he has already left." "Are you the one sent here by the church to ensure that I don't try to claim any more baby dragons?" The woman laughed. "No, that is not why I was sent here. But I would like to hear the story behind that." Chapter 1876, Replacement. Carl winked at her and conjured a metal stool with earth manipulation. "Come, have a seat, and I will tell you all about it. We don't have any other customers at the moment. You see, the Black Dragon has a particular objection to dragons being treated as pets, and I am a pet sitter who was once a beast master. So, I have an open beast space that I could bond a new partner in." That caused him some concern, given the nature of the pet sitter class and the fact that I am an avatar of the world dragon. The woman smiled. "You could have started with that part. I would have understood. The fear of me taking a dragon as a bonded pet is overblown anyhow. They will grow up big and strong all by themselves. It's better to bond the beasts with immense potential that need the right opportunities to advance. Something like a hawk that might one day become a dark flame phoenix, or a lightning sparrow that could become an impenetrable bulwark behemoth." The woman looked confused for a moment, then smiled. "So, you have a skill that lets you help beasts evolve? Ones that have reached the peak of their potential and need a chance to grow any further?" Carl nodded. "But it doesn't work on ones that are eligible for a system interface. So, it's not going to help anyone's injured friend or clanmate recover. However, we do have a skilled alchemist in the guild who is working on potions and pills along that path. The woman shook her head. No, it's more about the various monsters that I've seen in the wilderness since I arrived in this world. Many of them seem to be stunted versions of creatures that I knew at home, ones that had been bred for war. Carl nodded. There are many species like that. But what brings you here? Surely you didn't just casually ask about a demigod. That is a more personal matter. I was actually instructed by the Black Dragon to remain with the New Home Merchant clan for some time. They are lacking clerics for the church, and I have been informed that someone may have begun to rebuild a temple to the World Dragon in the compound. Carl raised his hand. That would be me. Actually, I just activated the system stones that were on the grounds. I didn't intend to open the church, as it's taken heavy damage and is considered a clan relic at this point. If you are stuck and waiting to advance your class, there is a waiting list to gain access. Normally, there isn't, but there is a recruiting event going on right now, and that has brought an influx of people who are stuck with the warrior class, despite having gained many new skills. The new home has graciously agreed to let them try the stones, for a reasonable fee. Charging for access to church resources? Charging for access to the block that it is situated on. Normally, that region is out of the public access area of the clan, well within what is now the residential area. That makes a lot of sense. Keeping the clan's precious resources for themselves, especially as it is no longer an open temple. How is the condition? Fully destroyed. It's enclosed in a barrier that only I could access. The clan leader can't even access it without holding my hand to enter. So, the temple itself and the system stones within it are still protected from interference, but you only need to be close to the system stones to activate the obelisk and start the class change process. However, I will warn you that the class change protections are somewhat lacking. Immortals can see in, so they can watch all the funny faces that you make while you're deciding. The visitor laughed. That sounds like something that the World Dragon would do. Put you in a separate space for safety, but install a window so that others can still be entertained by you. You know, I never thought about it that way. I had assumed that it was just an error in the way that I reactivated the stones. But from this point forward, I will blame the divine will of the World Dragon for the situation. Are you sure that is wise? Blaming random things on the gods does have a tendency to upset them. Carl shrugged. Blaming entertaining things on the World Dragon rarely goes wrong. Plus, it's a system obelisk for changing classes. The fact that it works at all relies heavily on the will of the World Dragon. Though, it also works to activate the classes of those with laughing god-based systems, so there is some overlap there. Perhaps because they're in the same pantheon, perhaps because they share a similar sense of humor. The woman looked vaguely scandalized, then sighed. Yes, you have a point on that front. Your god does have an odd sense of humor, even if his systems are a bit less random and cruel than those of the laughing god. Is there another temple that I might use to set up? The clan leader and the elders are all busy with missions regarding the recruitment event for the next few days, but I was hoping to get myself situated and into a room before then. Carl shrugged. Rooms there I can't help you with, but if you want to take a room here for the time being, I can get you one in the guild house. If you're sent by the gods, I won't have to worry about you stealing or harming my members. Plus, the priestesses are here if you do cause trouble. The woman laughed, and I'm sure that you would find it highly entertaining if I was the one being spanked for annoying them. Not me, personally. But we have a forest trickster that likes to make short videos of entertaining things that happen around the guild. Chapter 1877, Veda. If you're not here to ensure that I do not keep a dragon among my bonded beasts, might I ask why you were sent to the New Home Merchant clan? Perhaps your mission is something that I can help with, and it might change what room would be best. Carl offered, changing the topic away from the likelihood of Opal recording visitors. The visitor smiled. I am a seeker of the Blue Dragon, and I was sent here to attempt to discern where the new home's sudden power influx came from. There were multiple rare skills recorded that the dragon libraries didn't have them recorded as knowing, and possibly one that we have not recorded before. However, now that I'm here, I have a good idea of where to start. The source should be you, right? According to my system, it says that you have Ancient Rune Forging as a trade skill, and that is an extremely rare one. Well, miss, Carl checked her nameplate. Veda, it's a pleasure to meet you. I knew that the blue dragon would get curious eventually. Indeed, I have the ancient runeforging skill, but we also have dozens of runecrafters and a few divine runesmiths in the guild. So, while I might be responsible for some of the new skills, much of the new knowledge is up to the creativity of the guild. Veda laughed. In that case, I might as well take a room here for longer than just a few days, or I'll end up commuting by portal every day to do my work. Tell me, how did you manage to find so many runecrafters? I trained them, naturally. A secret skill of the world dragon avatars. The seeker stared at him, and her eyes flashed with bright blue, holy light. Secret skill of the world dragon avatars? If I told you, it wouldn't be much of a secret, would it? Veda rolled her eyes. Fine, be like that. But those priestesses, they're constructs, but not summon creatures, right? You found a way to put their creation spell on an object. Carl nodded. Indeed. It's a trick that most runecrafters can do, if they know the epic golem spell and the requisite runic formations to create the base of the spell. It takes a significant amount of mana to activate, but if you do it right, it's self-sustaining. So, you don't have members dedicated to funneling mana into a storage stone just to keep your guild house active? That sounds incredibly inefficient. No, the guild house only needs support to keep the protective barriers active during an attack. I really should have asked the avatar to help with that before he left. He seemed like a friendly sort for a black avatar, and he might have helped us with a divine barrier over the guild house. Veda stared at him with an expression that said he was either insane or stupid. You do understand that he was sent here because you were in trouble, right? It was all a big misunderstanding. You see, the black dragon has seen something in the future that made the death god convinced that I shouldn't have a dragon. But one of my friends got a dragon, and she's kind of small and cute, like an excited puppy. So, the black dragon thought that I might be trying to bypass the restriction by having another beast master bond dragons, and then taking that person as a pet. And that's not what you were doing? Not exactly, but it all worked out in the end. It's good to have another beast master in the group, even if she only got it right before immortality. So, she's only got a spirit bear cub and a divine lightning dragon hatchling bonded to her. She sounds like an astounding combatant. Carl laughed. She's a healing specialized green dragon priestess. That took Veda a moment to process. You had a healer, a green priestess that you described as an excitable puppy, bond with a spirit bear, one of the most powerful immortal spirit species, who are immune to physical damage entirely. And then with the divine lightning dragon, whose combat damage output is among the highest of all divine dragon species. Carl nodded. One is super fluffy, and the other is warm and cuddly. Veda smiled. Yes, that makes much more sense than thinking of the actual abilities of a species that she bonded with. What might she be doing right now? I distracted her with a summoned Vorpal bunny. She's likely still holding it and trying to feed it snacks. The blue dragon seeker of knowledge laughed. You have mastered the art of dealing with the green priestesses. Were you perhaps raised in the church? I know that you have a world dragon system, but on some worlds both of them coexist. On the mortal realm world where I was born, in fact, we all have world dragon systems, but the church is the dragon church. Then you understand better than most, I suppose. I don't sense any other dragon clerics in the immediate vicinity, though. Just a spider, an elf, and a bunch of lichens, plus the visitors. I have a separate space for most of the guild to relax, and that is a bit larger than the city, with more natural space. Essential, especially to the flying members of the group. I take it that you do have dragons in your guild branch? Yes, quite a few of them, actually. But the core group contains a black dragon, a red dragonkin who can transform to fly, and the green priestess, who can transform into the most adorable hatchling-sized green dragon. The seeker sighed. That's likely deliberate, isn't it? I can't think of any spell that only gives you a hatchling form. Carl nodded. I believe that her advisor dragon, or whatever priestesses get, is also a hatchling from the divine realm. They talk fairly frequently, as the dragon is a curious sort, as expected of a green dragon. Chapter 1878. Just a small loan. Since I've found one of the many targets for my search within the region, do you mind if I ask questions while you wait for customers? Carl shrugged. I don't mind. Even if there are customers here, there are some questions that I can still answer. It's not like everything is a secret, and sometimes letting fun things slip helps make allies of the most unlikely sorts. Veda frowned. That might be true for a World Dragon avatar, but that was not true for nearly anyone else in the Immortal Realms. If you revealed anything resembling a weakness or a secret, it would be used against you in the future. You're a remarkably open person. Are you not worried that someone will come to try to induct you into their guild by force? Carl shrugged. I have considered it. But if they don't send a legend, I don't see it as a major danger, as the Darklight host is perfectly capable of fielding supreme ranked reinforcements for a battle. We're also working on proper base defenses, as we just moved into this city location. Once they're done, we won't have too much left to worry about, as the city itself will be capable of defending the members. So, my concern is less that someone will come here to try to grab me, than that they might target other members when they are outside the guild. We might have most of the things we need right here, but we still go out to collect resources fairly regularly, and I greatly dislike the prospect of losing members to violence. Don't we all? Well, all of us from sane and reasonable factions. There is nothing more annoying for the Blue Dragons than to lose one of their people when they are on a data-gathering mission. Who knows how much was lost with them? They might have died with all their notes in their inventory, and certainly anything that they had learned on that mission would be lost with them. Carl nodded in agreement, but he did notice that the concern of the Seeker was that the knowledge would be lost, more than that the person with the knowledge would be lost. It was a subtle distinction, but once all the knowledge was recovered, they would be much less devastated. While they were talking, a small group of customers came in, looking excited and holding something carefully in their hands. Carl was about to send one of the priestesses to take care of them, but Kara appeared in a uniform dress, half black and half white. Ladies, welcome to the Darklight Host Guild store. What can we help you with today? We found a precious resource, and we would like to trade it directly for gear, instead of through the clan warehouse. Kara nodded, and they held out the object, which appeared to be a massive pearl, the size of a bowling ball. Kara examined it and smiled. Oh, this is good. A perfectly formed black pearl from a void immortal clan. All right, we can offer you a good price for that. What would you like in exchange? The girls put on their best negotiating faces, trying to hide how eager they were to get the items they were trading for. Veda smiled as she noticed their failure, as well as the Chaos Badger's clear interest in the pearl, which she was hiding much better. We were hoping to exchange it for 3 staves, one for each of us. At the rare grade. That last part was added in a deliberately casual tone that told anyone with a bit of experience that they didn't expect to actually get all 3, or not all 3 at rare grade. But the pearl was an epic grade crafting material and should weigh well over 5 kilos. Pearls that size were very rarely used intact, and were usually ground for pearl powder to use in alchemy or other crafting recipes. So, it was actually something that should be sold by weight. But they didn't know that. Carl did the mental calculation, and found that even the 3 rare grade staves would still be a heavy discount on the price of the pearl if the exchange was made at the guild warehouse. At least, at the prices both were turned in for. They marked them up before resale, and that would change the trade-in to purchase math. All right, I will put out all the staves we've got, and you can pick 3 rare grade staves from the rack, Kara agreed. She really did grab all the staves from the guild store storage and line them up along the wall. Dozens of staves, all slightly different in an overwhelming quantity, as they all had different abilities and would need to be examined individually, then compared. The group also had 2 mages and a druid. So, they were all looking for very different skills on the weapons that they were picking. Interestingly, the druid was about to pick a staff that had a bear transformation on it. You don't have a bear form? Kara asked. I took the full healing route because we're so short on healers in our class. So, I don't have any of the transformation druid skills at all. But having a bear form would make me much safer. Kara smiled. I know just the spell for you. In fact, I can grant you a skill book in advance, and you can pay it back later with work in the shop. Carl narrowed his eyes, wondering what the badger was up to. The problem with Kara causing trouble was that she never had that telltale sense of guilt that most would have when they were doing something wrong. She only did what was entertaining, so there was no change in emotions or sudden surges in the intensity of their connection that would tip Carl off without searching for her thoughts. And now it was a bit late to be stopping her. She had already made the offer. Kara held out a book. All you have to do is come work in the shop until your wages cover the price of the skill book, and we're even. I won't even ask for your full wage. Half to you, half to your debt. The young druid thought about the options and then nodded. But I will need to alter my schedule around the needs of my group. Oh, that's not an issue. We're very flexible with scheduling. Because they didn't actually need another worker. Carl thought. Kara handed the girl the book, and the druid immediately flipped it open, even as her friends screamed in terror.
No.
Wait, don't do it. That's an artifact-grade skill book. But it was too late. New skill learned, Warbeast, Immortal rank, Artifact-grade transformation. Grants a fully armored bestial form with epic-grade physical abilities and health pool. Chapter 1879. Kara is recruiting? Veda stared at the druid as the girl transformed into a 600-kilo honey-colored dire bear, covered in thick black armor. Ooh, that's a nice transformation. No wonder the badger thought it would be perfect. For a healing druid, this is a game-changer. Epic-grade constitution, faster movement speed, incredible attack power. Yes, that's going to work out very well for their group, the Seeker decided. That's if we live long enough to ever go out again. One of the mages moaned. Nonsense, it's just a skill book. Artifact grade, yes. But still just a skill book. Even if she only works 3 days a week, that leaves 4 to go out, and she should have the book paid off in what? 50 years? That's not so bad. The bear looked shocked. What? 50 years for a skill book? Carl laughed. I'm sure we can find a way for you to pay it back faster than that. But an artifact-grade skill book usually costs about 10,000 points from the clan library if they allow you access to it. They're a bit difficult to replicate, you see. Special materials, skilled inscriptionists. But never fear, we're good about repayment, and we won't make life hard for you as long as you keep showing up for work. Look at it this way, you now have job security, and just like Min, half your pay will be going to paying off your debts. The mages laughed. The green dragon at the clan warehouse was only in debt because she kept taking loans to go do fun stuff on her days off. The warehouse elder indulged her with advances, but it was never more than she could pay back off her next salary distribution. She just did it every single week. Actually, her debt had gone down recently, as Kara was covering many of the ice cream runs. Opal was running the movie theater and letting her in for free, and she hadn't had time to go looking for new creatures in the wilderness with the change in locations. There was too much to do setting it all up. Plus, the bunnies in the warehouse were finally getting used to her presence. You just hire random people like that? Veda asked quietly. Her friends seem to think that working for you is a sketchy arrangement. Carl winked at the blue dragon seeker. Probably because it is. But Kara never picks someone to give good gifts to if there isn't a valid reason. So, we will take this druid as a new employee and help her find opportunities in the future so that she doesn't spend too long working in a shop when she'd rather be doing something else. The druid transformed back into her unassuming human form and stared at her hands for a moment. I think that I'm actually stronger than our main tank in that form, she informed her friends. Kara wrapped a friendly arm around her and smiled. An epic-grade dire bear has 20 times the health of the average spirit immortal. Plus, the actual strength of a dire bear is way higher. Now you're nearly the perfect healer. I only know of one healer who is better at the start of spirit immortal than you are, and she's got a super special class and a bonded spirit bear. Now, how about we get you fitted for uniform, and I can introduce you and your friends to the other staff here at the guild shop. At that moment, Lucille walked in with a cleaning assistant statue in her hands. Perfect timing. Lucille, meet Amy. She will be helping you here in the shop for the foreseeable future. Her friends are welcome to join us as well if they want. But Miss Amy got a super special spell on loan, so she'll be working it off. Lucille smiled. Welcome to the Darklight House store, Amy. They're an odd bunch, but you get used to them. If anyone is giving you trouble, look for Big Sister Priestess. She is great at scaring people into behaving. You'll look awesome in the uniform. The Leekin did a little spin in her black and white dress, which nearly matched her raven dark hair and pale skin, plus the shiny black fur of her fluffy wolf ears. Aren't you too young to be working full-time? Amy asked. Lucille gave her a formal curtsy and giggled. I'm actually working part-time. I finished school early, so I don't have any more classes. But I'm still working on my immortal spirit. I'm a wolf lord by class, a Leekin version of a golem mage, or perhaps beast ranger. It's not quite the same as either. But if your group needs another damage dealer, I'm reasonably skilled. Ooh, that would be good. We've got a warrior for a tank, but we could use golems. Neither of us know the spell. We've been saving our clan credits to buy defensive spells before we start going too far out from the clan. Kara raised her hand, and the mages began to laugh. I don't think that we'll buy them on credit, sorry. You got one of us, you don't need all of us. Are you sure? I know all the Golem series spells. Kara taunted. Kara was beginning to wonder if Kara was actually trying to gather a whole group of early spirit immortals to make a 10-person group for the ladies of the tiny world. If that was the goal, they were doing pretty well. If you counted Maish and Lucille, plus these three, you would only need 2 tanks, and you'd have the whole group. Surely, it couldn't be hard to find a pair of low-spirit immortal warriors to tank for a group with that much damage output. They would certainly be capable enough to take on most things, and once the ladies had their immortal spirit stabilized, they would be ready to go out. It would also eliminate the power imbalance of going with stronger members when they were doing easier fights, and the stress of trying to keep up when doing something tailored for Carl and Dana. Chapter 1880. The Great Sham. The 2 mages were seriously tempted by the offer of Golem skill books, Carl could tell. But they didn't fully trust Kara not to tempt them with something super expensive that they would be paying on for ages. The basic Golem skill book is a common grade skill. You could likely even borrow enough from your mom to buy it if it was a priority. In my opinion, it's one of the essentials for mages. Other than your basic arcane barrier or equivalent personal defense skill, having some sort of constructs to back you up should be the basics for mages. Elementals are also an option, and you can tailor them to match your affinities, Carl suggested. Elementals? Aren't they supposed to be super powerful? Carl nodded. They are, most of the time. If you'd like to make a deal, I can customize you a skill, and I bet that Miss Veda here would subsidize some of the cost. New skills are sort of her thing, and she hates to miss out on the chance to learn new things. You know elemental magic? Veda asked dubiously. Carl laughed, then transformed using Elemental's Wrath to turn himself into a being of spirit flames, then activated Elemental Blade and Flaming Body. In the end, he was a floating 3-meter-tall fire elemental with an epic-grade flaming sword and a nearly impenetrable barrier. Then, he changed back and let the mages take a moment to decide whether his level of magic was worth going into debt for. How good of a skill are we talking? How much debt do you want to take on? Because I can make a peerless grade custom skill for you, as long as it's fire or lightning-based. Well, I could do most elements as well as nature, which you can't use, but not as well as those 2. The druid looked hopeful for a second, then realized that she was already in what amounted to generational debt to the Darklight host for the skill she already had. Carl winked at her. Don't worry about it too much. The Army of Nature's Vengeance is 5,000 mana per summon construct. At your level, it would barely be usable, much less overwhelming. Even Veda looked impressed at that one. 5,000 mana per construct? That was overkill, so the summoned creature had to be exceptionally powerful. Seeing her interest, Carl called one dryad, who stared around the shop as she appeared, looking for the threat. The Seeker of the Blue Dragon wanted to know what you were, Carl explained. The dryad nodded. Greetings, Seeker. My presence here lasts but 1 hour if you have questions. The druid frowned. Isn't that? No, I'm sure of it. That's a dryad tree lord. They're healers so powerful that the one dungeon that has them never actually gets cleared. Even the dark elven priestesses don't have the healing output that those things do. And the vines. I've heard horror stories. The dryad looked immensely pleased that her people were legendary among the locals. Unlike Oathbreaker, They didn't have the persistent memories of their summoning, but she was certain that the one who had called her was even more terrifying than she was. I want an elemental summoning skill, but I'm not allowed to spend money without asking my mom, one of the mages admitted. Oh, I thought you were all old enough to be graduated. Kara, we need to talk about who you pick for employment. The druid laughed. We are all graduated, but we all still live at home. Having to tell my parents that I got a part-time job because I owe the Darklight host a fortune is not going to be a fun conversation. Kara laughed. Call her over here, and we can explain it in a way that will totally excuse you. Trust me, I'm good at this. The girls got excited and began sending system messages to their parents. Only, when the parents began to arrive, Kara realized that they might have some issues she had not foreseen. These were all PDA moms. She had seen them when she was taking Leo to school and on the days that she decided to attend classes herself. But they were not the fun moms. They were the boring ones that made up rules for no good reason. They didn't even let their younger kids go out for ice cream with the class. But Kara was not one to give up that easily. Welcome, welcome. Please follow me to the back, and we can sit in comfort. Everything will make perfect sense in a moment. The adults were naturally cautious around the badger, given the reputation both of her species and of Kara herself. But they didn't want to cause a scene in public, which would be bad for their own reputations. So, they followed Kara into the back, and the badger immediately called Opal over to help her with visuals for the sales pitch. Wonderful. Now that everyone is here, I will explain the situation clearly. These lovely young ladies have been granted an exclusive opportunity to work with the Darklight host to build their skills in a diverse and specialized direction, guiding them towards an epic grade class advancement after only a few years. To start with, it is necessary to transfer a few skills that will instantly raise their combat power so that they can keep up with the curriculum. However, the Darklight host is willing to offer zero fee, zero interest financing on the necessary epic grade and higher skills. The Darklight host also offers work placements for candidates so that their studies don't affect their ability to support themselves. We offer exceptional lodging options should the candidates wish to remain in residence closer to their work and training. Miss Opal, if you would. Opal opened an illusionary view of the upper floor of the guild house, and Kara continued. These are the resident rooms. Each is a fully contained suite, and we have mystic cooks on staff, with meals included for all employed workers, as well as all other guild members. It is a productive and social setting, with nearly every member being either a dedicated resource harvesting specialist or a skilled craftsperson. If any of them should wish to join the guild in the future to take up a professional crafting skill, that is also possible. Members of the Darklight host are not charged for crafting skill books, though there is a membership clause, to prevent recruits from taking the knowledge and immediately leaving. Now, as for what comes first, the ladies have expressed an interest in elementals, conjuration, elemental combat skills, and defensive abilities. We can and will offer all of them at a discounted price compared to the new home merchant clan, as long as they are enrolled in our training program. The level of sham that Kara was pulling was high enough that even Opal was impressed. If she didn't know better, she would think that the badger was actually running a vocational college for mages and druids, and not simply recruiting them for whatever scheme she had dreamed up after seeing a vision. Now, Miss Amy, as you have already accepted the first skill book, please show the group your new defensive skill. Ladies, this is the Warbeast Transformation, an artifact grade skill book that creates an epic grade transformation. Isn't she magnificent? And it doesn't interfere with her healing abilities at all.